Yes, okay. Now, no more reason not to listen. Please be seated so that we can start our afternoon program. And the first thing we are going to do is we're going to hear the results of the breakout sessions. And I have the chairs here with me who managed the breakout sessions. And I have asked them each to give in a few words a summary of what was discussed in the breakout session. And maybe I'll take you in the order that you're sitting next to me and give the floor first to Alejandro Izuzquiza. Is that okay?
It's very well pronounced.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
So he is, of course, the Director of Operations of the Consorcio de Compensación de Seguros from Spain. And then next to him is Ian Dull, who is Senior Manager of Red Associates from Denmark. And then number 3, last but not least, Miguel Solana, who is a Senior Technical Officer, Impact Insurance Facility at the ILO. So, Alejandro, what were the conclusions of your panel?
Well, we reached a number of conclusions. I took some notes, and in order to be brief, I will summarize them. First of all, in order to tackle the natural catastrophes by the insurance industry, there is a need for a general frame. That means in every member state or in each country, a frame about the role of the government and the role of the rest of the stakeholders, such as insurers, should be clarified in order to know how to act, how to proceed in case of a catastrophe. Since it is not established, normally this is a good opportunity for the insurance industry to approach the government and to establish some relationships with the government. The second conclusion is that there is a need to share information. On the one side, the government should provide data and information to the insurance industry in order to allow the industry to approach these risks, to modelize, to calculate risks and rates. And on the other hand, insurance undertakings, the insurance industry should provide the government also with data about their experience in these catastrophes. There should be, thusly, a sort of cooperation. The third conclusion was about education. Education not only about risks, about the existence of insurance for these risks, but also regarding preventive measures, how to proceed in case of disaster to mitigate damages, and in the aftermath. It is important for those people who, as consumers, suffer from these disasters to know what these disasters may lead to and how to react to those disasters. Education in the sense of resilience, but resilience as a whole. That would be the fourth conclusion. Insurance is a part of a resilience program, or at least it should be seen as part of a resilience-oriented attitude of the consumer. Fifth conclusion would be the role of other stakeholders as regards the consumer. For instance, insurance intermediaries, real estate agents, or mortgage lenders. They are close to the consumer in specific moments of their life, and they should thusly speak them or orient them towards insurance and their attitude in case of disasters. The sixth one is there was a sort of a debate about public aids and the insurance compensation. This is a key issue from my point of view.
This is your issue. It's your work.
Yes.
Yes. So it is an important issue.
Yes, a very important one.
Sorry. Yes.
Well, in my view, insurance should be seen as the major contribution to the restoration of the situation that has been destroyed by the catastrophe. So aids would be, for instance, let's say, a second division in relation with insurance.
May I ask you a question about that? What happens if there's a flooding on a river between Spain and Portugal? And so part of Spain is flooded and part of Portugal is flooded. Yes, Gabriel, that happens.
Well, it is...
Who can do the loss adjusting? Who are the experts? Can the Spanish experts do...
yes, we
go to Portugal and do their job and vice versa?
Well, in the case there is a flood affecting Portugal and Spain,
yes.
As far as Spain is concerned, the Consorcio would handle the claims, assess the losses, and pay compensation to the insured by bank transfer. I mean, for those assets that are located in the Spanish territory. But we don't deal with catastrophes in Portugal.
No, but I have my house in Spain.
You have your house in Spain?
And there are 1,000 houses flooded in Spain.
Yes.
And there are experts going to assess the damage. And Spain doesn't, have enough assessors. Can they get assessors from Portugal to do the assessment in Spain?
Well, I think we have enough assessors. I mean,
you do?
Yes, we have tackled with some events with thousands of claims. Yes,
yes.
I mean, this morning I had a slide where I explained some recent events in Spain, and there were, for instance, 35,000 claims that were handled by
very quickly.
Our claim handlers. Yes, in 3 months.
In 3 months.
3 months time.
Very
yes.
good, very good. I think that's an exemplary situation, ladies and gentlemen.
I promise it's true.
Yeah, no, I believe you. I believe you. Yes, yes. No, it's very good news. Very good news that exists. But that you have enough. But because one of the problems in Europe is that indeed that if a flooding starts at the border of two countries, that people from the one country cannot go to the other country. This is a problem.
May I give you a brief example?
Exactly, yes. That's what we want to hear.
Yes, for instance, well, there is another conclusion, which is the key solution, that was my last slide this morning, is the public-private partnership. And there is a very close cooperation between the private insurance industry and the public consortium. For instance, severe windstorm clause in 2009 that meant 276,000 claims, which were handled by the private insurer and the consortium. So in case there is a problem, we would cooperate jointly, the insurance undertakings, the assessors of the insurance undertakings, and the loss adjusters of the consortium. I think we have a large experience. We began to work together in 1954, so that means that...
Congratulations.
Yes.
I think that is fantastic. I mean, after lunch, this is very good news. So let's move on then to another area which is also fascinating, of course, financial education. We heard this morning from the consumer representatives that the consumers do not want to be educated. So what were the conclusions of your panel?
I'm not sure we had strict conclusions, but I think a lot of good questions were raised, and maybe I'll add a couple to those that we didn't have time to. I think on the note of kind of the philosophy around financial education, I think there's obviously a big question in terms of, which was raised this morning, in terms of how much education is right. And I think we heard some strong perspectives that financial education at one level is somewhat of a human right, in the same way that you would think about health education and many other aspects of education, where it's just part of sort of being able to be in the world. You need to understand sort of how to deal with your budget, and money is so core to things, risk is so core to things. But I think the other aspect of it, and I think the other angle there, which was also brought up this morning, is how to really think about the product there, and how the products can actually build on top of that. And what can be done in the industry, and through regulation, through other structures that can support that, so that it can build on top of what is more sort of fundamental financial education. And there's obviously a lot of work to be done in both areas. And I think the interesting thing there, at least the questions that came to my mind when I was thinking about that are, where do we draw that line? What are some of the human rights? What are the things that everyone needs to be educated about? And then where is it that the industry and others can play and support that role? And what are some of the ways that products can come there? And I think the second sort of area that came up very strongly, and it's no surprise, would be around simplicity. And I think we heard that, I think, basic simplicity and the guidelines around basic simplicity that are in regulation are not even really being met today by a lot in the insurance industry. So there's a need to get up to the standards that are actually set by the European Union. But at the same time, it sounds like there's a need to collaborate more between regulators and the industry in terms of being able to define simplicity in a way that is actually simple for people.
Can you give us a definition of simplicity? I'm a regulator. I want to buy your definition.
I'm not. I think that's one of the biggest questions here in this area.
Yeah. It's like common sense.
Yeah.
I'd like to write into the law, use your common sense. But then the Americans ask me, how do you define common sense? That's...
Thomas Paine wrote about it in 1775.
It's 75, yes. Okay.
No, but I think one of the interesting questions there that I was reflecting on afterwards is, of course, there's a need for simplicity, but I think there's also an important thing to think about, and people were talking about behavioral economics this morning, in terms of what are the right ways to be simple, and when is the right time to be simple. And I think there's a lot of interesting things in terms of technology where you can say, start to think about, one, how do you get people up to the baseline, but also when is the right moment to give people more information, when is the wrong time to give people information, and how could you break that up in the right moments? And I think there's a lot that can be done there.
Can I ask you another question, and
Sure.
then we move on to the next? Can you give an example of a simple insurance product? Just to keep it simple.
Yeah. As an anthropologist,
Yes.
not an insurer, no.
Okay.
I mean, I think
No, but
as someone who doesn't understand the industry in its deep complexity. But I think, of course, there are angles, and when we've done research at my company, I think there are elements that people understand. There are at least expectations that they have around what it means to have content insurance, as they call it in Denmark, versus house insurance versus car insurance. And I think at least aligning to many of those expectations, which is quite easy to learn about from customers, is at least the baseline idea of simplicity. Then, of course, there's lots of caveats there. And I think, it's interesting, I'm sure not to talk too much about the sort of insurtech angle, but something like Lemonade, where they're now announcing that they're trying to write policies in a way that's legible. I'm skeptical to see sort of how that will be done, but I think writing it more in human terms could be a more simple way.
okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
This is a good lead-in to our next topic, which was financial inclusion.
Okay.
Please.
So pretty much we started the discussion, I think it links a lot to this about microinsurance. I think we went from this definition, microinsurance as simple products that cover relevant risks to people that are understood and used by their clients. And this is a definition that was coined up a little bit like some years ago, maybe if not more than a decade. And I think it is sort of this relevance around like what do we mean by simple? I mean, I would say little exclusions, no waiting times, easy to understand, something that I can read in a page and not in 20 pages. So it was this whole concept around microinsurance and how it leads to financial inclusion, and seeing that we initially started with microinsurance as insurance for low-income people. Now we say that we want insurance to cover those who are yet not covered by insurance. So I think it's including all that are currently underserved. And why do we want to do that? Because pretty much we see that insurance, at least from the ILO perspective, that insurance plays a very important role in the current development agenda, meaning that helps us to manage risks at different levels. We can say it at the household level, family, but also at the enterprise level, starting from micro, small, middle enterprises that need to manage better the risks, up to enterprises, up to governments that need to manage the risks. So we see that there's a real need for this kind of insurance in the global development agenda, and we also see the part of like where insurance can help for capital mobilization. So what do we see as challenges in terms of financial inclusion, in terms of like how can insurance become more inclusive? I mean, we see it both from the client perspective. I mean, seeing that people have problems to understand the product. They have budget constraints. They have cultural practices that have been in place for centuries and that start to adapt. So I think we understand that, and then we understand that the industry also has challenges. The industry on its own cannot reach out to masses, to a majority of people around the world, I would say in the developing and emerging world. So how do you reconcile these two things? And I think the things that we were seeing is like, how are emerging business models to do this kind of things? I mean, we see that technology is a very powerful tool. It's a powerful tool that can help us on the product design, meaning improving the data that we can collect and how we can analyze it. We can talk about product design. How can we create better interfaces for clients? We can talk about premium collection and how mobile money is creating a revolution in Africa in how we can have easy transactions based on a mobile phone. We can see it, I think, in the risk management and seeing how we can start using satellite images, better control mechanisms, and how to integrate technology on that front, and how can we use that at the last element of the value chain, which is claims payment, which we believe is one of the key elements, which is a little bit like bringing a positive experience to people. And we see that that is one of the greatest challenges of the insurance industry. How do you create a first good experience, and an experience that I believe it creates the right education? If I have a product that I deem as useful to me, I will want to buy it. And I think as adults, we know that we learn by doing. Actually, I think this thing about teaching, I believe we learn something when we can use it, when we see that it's practical in an everyday life and that it provides a solution to our problems.
If I can take you on this idea of experience, one of the problems of underinsurance is that people don't like to be reminded of their risks. Yeah. So it has to start somewhere. Who is going to tell people this is a risk that you need to insure? And I find you a very simple product to do that. Who has to take that initiative?
I would say it's actually a process that it's a little bit reverse to that. We believe that we know what people want, whereas actually my experience with several insurers, and maybe not European ones, so I wouldn't blame that, but it's go and talk to your clients and see where their preferences are. And when you start talking to, and then clients can be families, but they can also be small, medium enterprises. They're managing risks, just that sometimes we have the feeling that the industry is maybe not understanding like what is the relevant risk that people want to, that families want to buy, that me as an individual want to insure? And is the industry providing me the solution for that? And we have seen that taking, and I think this must have been something like a client-centric approach, or these ideas where like, where do we put them in place in understanding if we're providing a relevant solution in terms of risk management, but also in terms of the experience that they're having. Yeah. The solution may be there in terms of a product on its own, but maybe it's not coming at the right moment. Maybe the information is not reaching to me when I'm open to receive this information. I mean, we've done lots of research in saying like most of the information that we give about insurance through banks is at the moment of a loan. And at the moment of the loan, people want to get their credit, their money, and get it up and get through with this moment. And then we want to squeeze a whole bunch of information about insurance.
But take, for instance, home insurance. Right?
Yeah.
There is this village, there's nobody has home insurance. And you believe it's necessary. It's very important that people have home insurance. Yeah. Are you just going to send an email to the people, buy home insurance? How would you do that? How would you start a process?
I would go and visit them and see how they live.
That's what I wanted to hear. So you can't send a robot. It means it must be a person to person. Yeah. If you want the system to work, it has to be the human contact rather than, I think information technology is probably not the right way to do that.
I would say this is one of the conundrums of using technology, and this is like what we could say like a low touch, high touch. I mean, technology reduces the amount of contact what we have with our clients, but our clients want contact. They want like this thing, like there's someone in front of me sort of explaining me, telling me something instead of a machine. And I think this is sort of one of the things we still need to learn. What is the amount of contact that we can have at certain points? And what is the right kind of information? What is the right kind of feedback that I can take? And I think in certain cases, we can certainly use more technology. Data collection, we don't need to go there for certain kind of data collection. When I want to identify risk, maybe I need to go there, understand things, do a little bit of different kind of research that allows me to understand what as an insurance industry need to be covering nowadays. I mean, maybe this is where we see that when we've been doing microinsurance, we have had to do that, and maybe this is the reverse innovation that may be coming out of the emerging world. In order for us to create these micro products, we had to do that, and maybe what we have done there is something that may be useful now in order to make insurance products more relevant in today's world and society.
Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking our three panel leaders for their work. Thank you so much.